Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcast.
Welcome along to episode 58 of Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcast, brought to you with tapdoor.com and hopsathome.co.uk. Welcome along to the show. It's me, Dave D.
And me, Dave B.
And we have got the usual array of goodies for you, with some extra thrown in as well.
Yes, we'll hear about your trip to Beer X, where you actually, funny enough, what our guest was. And you got to see them as well, having only a couple of days earlier had a conversation with them on the medium of Zoom. You then got to meet them face to face.
Well, I saw him face to face
in the distance.
But there's so many people there that so when you sort of see somebody, you think, oh, I'll go and have a chat, and then you go over and then they've gone. But there was lots of people there. It's like a who's who of the beer world. So we'll talk about that later. We'll talk about that probably while we're having 3 mystery beers.
There's a few brewers have been doing this recently, but some mystery type beers. But Siren are doing it slightly differently. They have 3 beers. They are all double dry hopped. They are all the same percent, 5.5, but they are all single hopped. And the task is simple. Can you guess the hop?
You're doing this with us, completely with us. We're going to do it straight off, drink them, and then enter our findings into the website, which is what you're supposed to do, so we shall see. So our interview that Dave touched on is with Sean O'Reilly from Breed's Cross in Greater Manchester. Very fascinating talk with Sean, who tells a mean story.
He tells a mean story, and that then is translated into his beers as well, which also tells stories. It's a lovely concept. It works really well, I think. The beers are great. It's a bit like Axeljack from a couple of episodes back, but it feels like these breweries are doing traditional style beers but brought forward into the modern craft way of things at the moment.
And we'll be road testing a couple of his beers. We've got Tried and Tested, where we talk about our favourite beers since our last episode. The brewer's wife was on schedule to be here as usual, but she's got a doctor's note. She's not feeling too well, so she'll be back on the next episode to tell us all about her recent trip with brewer Dan down to Bristol to some of the tap rooms down there. But we will kick it off, as we always do, with the feature we call Brew to Me, where we try a beer from a brewery we haven't sampled before. So then, Dave, what have you got for us this time?
Well, this time I have possibly one of the beers I've been most excited about for this feature in a long time, and I'm always excited to do them. But it's not often that I get to do one that is wine bottle size.
Oh, man. I'm jealous of that. I'm so jealous of that. I want to reach into the screen and grab that.
And it is a Saison-inspired beer, farmhouse ale, 5.5%, and it comes from Sobre Messe. And Sobre Messe are based in the Brecon Beacons. So we're back in Wales, having had our fill of Wales, you would have thought, last episode, but no, we're back for more.
Yeah, this is like 3 in a row we've been heading to Wales.
We'll hear from Adrian in a bit, who'll tell us more about them, but it's ever so exciting. And it's, again, we find these places and you think, how on earth has this been existing sort of almost under our noses, and how do we not know about things like this?
Sobre Messe doesn't sound very Welsh, though, does it? Well,
Adrian is Spanish.
I explained it.
Yeah, there's definitely more of a sort of European take on the brewing here. As I say, I've got a farmhouse ale, and what they specialise in is farmhouse beers and natural ciders. But
you should have seen what he just did. That is unforgivable. What are you doing, Dave? Tell the listeners what you're doing. Well, he can't because he's got a mouthful. Hold on. I'll tell you what he's doing. It's fizzed everywhere, and he's collecting the excess fizz in his mouth. Never seen anything quite like it. Well, you just got a taste there that you didn't expect to have. What was that like?
Well, that was more froth than anything, but so this beer has sat in the fridge for well over a week, if not closer to 2 weeks. And it's been upright, and it just goes to show how lively this is.
This sounds awesome. I love the sound of this.
I think the brewery I'm thinking of when I'm about to try this is like a Little Earth Project or something.
Yeah. This is Little Earth Project meets Spain.
Yes, they've got their own yeast, which is the Rosalind yeast. So, they've got a house culture which they use to do their stuff. This is all very natural. Okay, it's not got much of a nose, but it is a little bit winey, a little bit cidery as well.
Looks sort of golden.
Sort of apple juicy, goldeny yellow, I would say.
Nice.
not one of those hazy yellows or anything. It's that saison-y colour.
I was going to say, what's the carbonation like? We've already discussed there was a fair bit when you opened it, but when you're drinking it, what's it like then? Not so much?
No, loads.
Oh, there is lots, right.
I don't know if you can see it.
Yes, yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah, really fizzy. Yet not effervescent. It's a little bit dry, but not super dry. It's not some sort of really big, dry, yeasty saison. It's really, really drinkable. And it feels to me like something that instead of there being a bottle of white wine on your table for lunch, and your lunch is, say, a leafy salad, some mozzarella, some cured meats, that's what that goes with. That's not necessarily one you open up on a Friday night when you've got to the end of the working week and you want to have something, nice and simple, nice hazy pale or nice lager or something. This is one that you have when you're thinking of an occasion like I've just described. It's lunch or it's a dinner thing, or you've got friends coming round and you're all sat outside and you.
I'll tell you where I want to drink that. I want to drink that on the beach.
Yeah, great shout.
That'd be lovely, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's a superb shout. The other thing which is worth mentioning is, which I know excites you as well, we talked about Little Earth Project. Little Earth Project have accommodation and keeping everything really natural. If you wanted to go stay at Sobremesa, you can, because they do have a campsite, and it is very much a campsite. This isn't glamping or anything like that. It's you take your car up to it, get all your stuff out, and then the car has to go away. You are sort of living very rough and ready, I suppose.
Rough and ready, yeah. So if I take my car there and my tents and pitch up the tent and get rid of the car, can I then get some of this stuff to drink while I'm in my tent?
Well, there is a tap room, so yes.
Oh, awesome.
There is a tap room, and funnily enough, I'm just looking at this now, and what do they serve in the tap room? Cheese and charcuterie boards.
Oh, nice. Perfect.
So there you go. This isn't the only beer they do. They've got a farmhouse pilsner and also, interestingly, actually, a dark oatmeal stout, which I wouldn't necessarily have thought they would have, but they do. That's all they've got at the moment in the beers range. It's a small range, but if this is anything to go by, I'd love to try the pilsner. I'd love to try the stout. As much as this beer is lovely, I think just the whole idea is lovely. And I think once we hear from Adrian in a minute, you'll probably want to hear more from him.
I think this is very much one of those cases where it's an experience, not just a beer.
Definitely.
And if you go to the tap room, you get that experience. Let's hear from Adrian anyway and hear what he has to say.
Hi there. Firstly, we would like to say thank you very much to Dave and Dave to give us the chance to showcase our produce in Daftaboutcraft. Sobremesa Drinks is a multidisciplinary enterprise creating terroir-driven farmhouse beers and natural ciders in Talgath, Wales, as well as growing organic soft fruit to flavour the drinks in Hay-on-Wye. The whole project is based on a circular economy model. We grow the fruit, we're using it within the drinks, and then we valorize the soft product and closing the loop. We're working with Cardiff Metro University to develop a product with the spent grain and the spent apples, so all the waste that we generate comes back into the system. We are one of the few current breweries using only British malts and British hops, but also incorporating Welsh-Asian grains like hanging row. We have isolated our farmhouse yeast from the farm itself, and it has been identified by the National Collection of Yeast Cultures. The main goal for Sobremesa Drinks in the long term is to play a part in changing the current food system by making drinks in a more sustainable way that prioritizes source supply chains, local produce, and the Welsh terroir. Finally, the project is an obvious nod to my Spanish heritage and my time that I spent living in northern Spain. Sobremesa is a fantastic word that doesn't translate easily into English. It's basically the time you spend at the table after your lunch in Spain, drinking and chatting with the people that you're with. It resonates with how I want our products to be enjoyed, with good company and without rushing. I feel privileged to work firsthand with the fantastic produce Wales has to offer and spread that message through the untranslatable word of Sobremesa. The beer we have today is our farmhouse ale. It's a saison-inspired beer brewed with an ancient Welsh wheat, hanging row, Goldings and Sovereign. It's fermented with our unique house strain, Rosalind yeast, isolated from Rackety Farm in Hay-on-Wye. Hope you enjoy it, guys. Salud.
I'll tell you the first thing I noticed there about Adrian, Dave. That Spanish accent, obviously very thick, but there's also a Welsh twang to it.
There is, isn't there? It's an interesting accent. It's not one you sort of hear very often. But, as I say, he very clearly embodies everything that they're doing, doesn't he?
Yeah.
You can tell he's passionate about it, and it is just that bit different. And I think they do fall into that Little Earth crossover blendery and places like that. I don't think we're going to be seeing some sort of New England IPA coming out of here. It's going to be saisons, maybe Flanders style beers. And
how long did he say he'd been going for? Because I cannot believe that we've not heard of him.
Incredibly, the beer journey started in 2014. 10 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, so the cider is a bit more recent. That's only 21, 22, but the beer has been going since 2014 in a way. It just goes to show like these amazing places that are doing their thing and quite happily getting on. And
a couple of episodes ago, we heard from Eric at Guyport in Wales, and he had a very fascinating story, and he'd been at it for a long time, and we didn't know much about him either, you know. Tell you what's interesting, Dave, I was at Beer X just recently, and Eric...
Taking the words out of my mouth.
Eric won 5, 6 awards. So you've got a brewery like that who've been going for some time, and all of a sudden...
everyone else cottons on.
Everyone else finds out about it. Nice that other people are recognising his beers. And, I actually went over to him and, said well done and everything. But I think what I'm saying here is that more of these different styles of beers are starting to get recognised, which is lovely to see.
Sobre Mess are on a bottle shop's website, because they do cans. You can buy cans off the website.
Right.
They don't all come in these big bottles. And I'm very grateful that I got a big bottle rather than a can, purely as much as anything to wind you up. But
well, it's working. I'm so jealous.
Yeah, they suddenly appeared and I thought, don't recognise them. Are they, British, American or, European or something? And found them, and lo and behold. So, this could be another one where they're just now they're canning and they're getting going, and might start to hear a bit more about them. But the beer itself, we should talk more about everything they do rather than the beer. It's just really nicely done.
I'm intrigued. I'm going to have to get some.
It's a little bit dry, but it's not very dry. It's not that yeasty or anything. It wouldn't be, when you sort of think of some of the real Belgian saisons that have that yeasty start and the smell.
Yeah.
None of that. It's got none of that. It's all very subdued, but in the nicest possible way. It's just, it would be a great beer to pair with their meat and their cheese offerings that they've got in the tap room. That's what I feel like this would lend itself to. And you'd have it on tap, and you'd probably just keep drinking it and not realise how many you've had of it, because it's very, very drinkable.
Well, they've got a tap room, and the brewery that I've got has got a brewery tap and then a second tap. They've got 2 outlets, and these guys have been going since 2005, so nearly 20 years. And to the best of my knowledge, I've never had a beer from them, which is why they're featuring on Brew to Me. The brewery in question is Spitting Feathers Brewery from Chester. Ever heard of them?
No, never had any Spitting Feathers.
Well, obviously you can imagine their roots are very traditional, but they've ventured out into not just cask and bottle, but also into keg and can. And what I've got here is a New England IPA called Overtime.
Okay.
So it looks like your normal type of crafty can, doesn't it? Your normal craft can offering. So it just shows you how breweries steeped in that tradition can deal with modern artwork. It doesn't all have to be traditional.
Just on that, have you noticed that Badger beers have gone into cans?
Yeah.
And if you didn't know any better, I would say whoever's done their canning has done very well, because it does blend in the best possible way, because you'd look and you go, oh, who are they? But then when you actually pick the can up, you realise it's that's not a knock on Badger beers, but to me, they are about as traditional as it gets.
Yeah, maybe we should try some. Maybe it'd be interesting. But then again, we did that with Timothy Taylor's, didn't we? And that wasn't.
Well, nothing can be as bad as that beer, so I'll be willing to give it a go.
I've still got a can of that in the fridge downstairs, actually, Dave, for when you come next. Anyway, let's pour this out. A nice deep yellow colour. That's the sort of colour I'd expect a New England to be.
What strength is this?
4.8%.
Oh, so that's sort of a bit almost borderline-y for what I would think of as New England.
You often think sort of over 5%, don't you, for a New England?
If not over 5.5, really. I always sort of think of them as in 5.5 to 6.5.
Hops here are Simcoe, Mosaic and El Dorado, producing intense tropical mango flavours, complemented by the floral aroma of dry-hopped Amarillo. So there's some Amarillo in the dry hop there.
Okay, nice.
Lots of lovely tiny little bubbles on the top, awesome colour, and the all-important taste test. Don't get a huge amount of fruit. I'm getting more of the bitterness, which wouldn't necessarily be to my liking, but having said that, it does go down very well. Very soft how you'd imagine a New England to be.
It sounds like perhaps the Simcoe is in the ascendancy.
Ooh, it's interesting, isn't it? Just gone back again. Little bit of fruit coming through. Let's listen to Rick, and we'll come back and see if any more of that fruit is shining through.
Hey guys, this is Rick from Spitting Feathers Brewery in Chester. For anyone who hasn't heard of us, the brewery was founded in 2005 when it took over operations on what was once a 19th century dairy farm out here in the beautiful Cheshire countryside in the small village of Waverton. When Matthew started the company, it was just a couple of guys who started brewing away with the aim of bringing the finest new, exciting and reliable real ale to Chester and the surrounding areas, and that's remained the case for the past 18 years. Back then, there were only around 300 breweries operating in the UK, and things have changed pretty drastically since then, but we're still here doing what we love. We were founded on the basis that real ale, at its very best, can and should be the finest pint of beer that anyone might experience anywhere in the world. On that premise, rather than shapeshift into larger operations, we still to this day remain the same size microbrewery that focuses on supporting local pubs. We can't imagine leaving the farm behind, as it's perfect for sustainable brewing, not just because dairy farms are built for all excess liquid to fall freely into indoor drains, but we even keep our own pigs to feed the spent grain, and hop waste adds to the compost for the local fields. The daily operation at Spitting Feathers HQ is a small team of 5, and there are 2 of us that brew on site, myself and Tom, who's recently celebrated spending half of his entire life working here. We have a capacity of 4 900 litre fermenters, with 2 cider FVs that we use once annually following the harvest on our own orchard and from across the local Grosvenor estate. On average, we manage to brew 3 times a week and have refined a core and seasonal range of ales that have become an iconic part of the drinking culture in the Northwest over the past 2 decades. Our house pale, Thirst Quencher, never goes a week without a new guile hitting the cellars, and last year we calculated that it surpassed 1.5 million pints sold. Many people consider Thirst Quencher to be something of a pilgrimage when visiting this part of the country. Our brewery tap, situated in a medieval hall on Lower Bridge Street, down the road in the centre of Chester, opened in 2008 and has a constant flow of the beer, as well as food made using as much of the produce from the farm as possible. At 3.9%, Thirst Quencher is sessionable, but like all of our beers has a highly satisfying deep malty flavour with a refreshing hoppy bitterness that's something we associate with the very best English pale ales. The beer itself, however, like much of our range, endures a constant state of innovation. We consider British pubs to be at the very heart of our community, and on that basis our second tap was opened on the Wirral in Merseyside, which will soon celebrate its 10th anniversary. Much like the brewery tap, but with its own style and connection to the community, the West Kirby tap introduces a thorough selection of our ales throughout the year, alongside a carefully selected range of guest beers from local and national craft breweries in cask, keg, can and bottle. We also have an exclusive run of keg beers which feature experimental American-style brews, such as our East Coast Pale, Session IPA, and Hazy New England IPA, which are still being fine-tuned as we speak. We may be known for producing quality traditional real ale, but we love nothing more than bringing in brand new international hop varieties and inviting people to take part in new experimental brews. One of the biggest updates to our range in recent years came the decision to move the brewery to an entirely gluten-free output. We realised how simple it was to remove the gluten during the process of brewing and saw no valid reason to stop our gluten-free and celiac customers from being left out of the experience of enjoying our beers. On that note, we also tried and tested a multitude of different alternate vegan findings until we realised that there was also no good reason for vegans to miss out either. We managed to distribute our beers to pubs and bars all across the northwest of England and Wales and do our very best to pop to the West Midlands whenever we can. It's also worth noting that we also find the time to produce a small batch gin, Spitting Feathers branded gin. We open up the farm around a dozen times throughout the year for our brew barn events, where we invite local bands to set to the stage in the barn next to our brewery, which has been specially converted to host beer drinking events in all weathers. Prepaid tickets allowed punters to leave their wallet at home and drink through an open bar with a selection of our core and seasonal cask and keg beers, along with our cider for 4 hours, each being treated to a fresh handmade pizza for good measure. Our biggest event of the year is the Spitting Feathers Beer Festival, and that runs on the 3rd Saturday each July, where we pull out all the stops with as much of our beers and cider as we can possibly brew in the lead up to the weekend. Proceeds from the festivals have so far raised more than £30,000 for charity. Everyone's welcome, so feel free to check out more details of our events, beers and pubs by visiting spittingfeathers.co.uk. Cheers!
Well, thank you very much for Rick there. You really gave us a great insight into what goes on down there at Spitting Feathers. So they've got the brewery in a barn, they've got brewery tap in the city of Chester, second tap on the Wirral. They've got it all going on. And you mentioned there those brew barn events. So you pay a fee to get in, and there's food, entertainment, drink. It's all included. It's just one fee through the door, and everything is paid for. Love the sound of that.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a lovely setting as well.
Almost like a beer festival, isn't it? A lot of beer festivals use that sort of model. You pay up front, and then you're in.
No secrets, because the cost is there up front. £35 for all that. Unlimited beer as well, it states.
Yeah.
They've got all their bands lined up all the way through till, well, they've got April, May, June all sorted, September as well.
This feature unearths so much insight that we would never have had otherwise. These brewers would go on doing their thing, we'd be none the wiser, listeners probably none the wiser. So it's lovely to help spread the word about what all these guys are doing.
Exactly, and I think these two complement each other quite well, actually, because they're so much more than just a brewery putting some cans out. They've got a campsite as well.
I hadn't noticed that, wow.
Yeah, so they've got another one with a campsite, 4 miles from Chester Centre.
Anyway, the news on the fruits front is that I can now detect it coming through more. I sort of rolled the can a little bit. I don't know whether that's helped. I'd possibly. Yeah, that bitterness is now not so pronounced on the front end, which suits me. That's better for me. Maybe not for you or anybody else, but for me, I like a bit of fruit and then the bitterness to come in afterwards. And that's what I'm getting now. So actually it's pretty good, that is. And the great news about these beers we've had today, of course, is that you can now get hold of them through tapdoor.com.
Daftaboutcraft.
Well, it's interview time now on Daftaboutcraft, and we're heading up the M6 to Greater Manchester to Rochdale, and we're joined by Sean O'Reilly from Breed's Cross Brewing. How you doing, Sean?
Yeah, I'm doing well, thanks, and congratulations on getting the pronunciation right, because it's one of those that everybody gets wrong, unfortunately.
We did cheat a little bit. We sort of did a little bit of research first and found out that's how you pronounce it, because it's actually spelt B-R-I-D-S, Breed's Cross, but pronounced Breeds.
That's right. It has a further an Irish accent over the letter I, which elongates the sound, and hence Breeds. Yeah.
And I guess it's a good place to start because your name says a lot about what you do there.
Yeah, Breed was a pagan goddess before the Christians came along and stole her, like they did so many things. So they created St. Bridget, and St. Bridget is a patron saint of brewers and also a patron saint of storytellers. So all of the beers that I brew are named in connection with folklore and mythology and what have you. Presumably
there's a story behind every beer as well then?
Yeah, absolutely. So on the actual beer cans and on our website, there's a little bit of information about each of the stories that goes with each beer. Ales inspired by tales. We try and give you a little bit of information about the story if you're interested, or if you're not interested, you can just enjoy the beer.
I like that. It's nice when there's something else behind the beer to talk about as well.
Well, I think so, and I think storytelling for adults, a lot of it goes on in the pub. Informal storytelling goes on in the pub because you go into the pub and there's somebody who's telling you some tall tale or something or other. So it's just part of life. But professional storytellers will often do events in pubs, so beer and storytelling definitely go hand in hand.
How did the sort of brewing story begin for you then?
Well, my very first experience of brewing was an incredibly long time ago when I was in sixth form and a chemistry teacher taught us how to brew as part of our general studies.
Oh, wow.
And that was extract kits. And the beer that I produced for a while there ranged from awful to just about drinkable. But that was a very long time ago. But then it was around about 8 years ago that I kind of got back into brewing and did some all grain brewing. And I have to give my eldest son some credit for that. He took me on a brewery tour at Adnams. I'm a Suffolk boy, and Adnams is my local favourite brewery in Suffolk. He took me to a brewery tour of Adnams, and that gave me a bit of an itch to want to have a go at brewing. And by coincidence, about the same time, a friend of mine got a book called 1 Gallon Brewing, which was an eye-opener because it meant that I could brew very small scale, just for myself and very inexpensively. Because after my first experiences of brewing, I was terrified of spending an awful lot of money producing rubbish beer. So starting with just 1 gallon, sort of 8 pints of beer meant that it was a very easy way to get into the hobby. So that was about 7 or 8 years ago. For a while, I was brewing once a week, once a fortnight, obviously only doing 8 pints at a time. I got through it quickly. So that meant I could have lots of experiments, lots of goes and lots of learning.
What were you brewing at this point then?
Oh, all sorts of things. I got hold of the Brewdog DIY manual. They've released it a couple of times over the years, and obviously this was at a time when Brewdog were held in a little higher regard than they are by some people nowadays. Yeah, so they released all of their recipes as like homebrew versions. So I did a load of those. I got the, I think it's Graham Wheeler who wrote lots of homebrew recipe books back in the day, so I got those. And I very quickly also started just designing my own recipes and just improvising based on what I'd read. So lots of IPAs, milds, best bitters, stouts, brown ales, absolutely everything, particularly awful kettle sour, which we won't go into.
I was just going to ask you, have you ever gone into the realms of the sour?
So I did do, as I say, an absolutely awful kettle sour, which was so bad that even my son wouldn't drink it. But I've also done some mixed firm stuff, like Flanders Red styles, that kind of thing. I absolutely love a Flanders Red. I like the Belgian beer styles. And I've done a few good, I think pretty good Flanders Red style beers with, like mixed cultures of Brettanomyces and Lactobacillus and various other things. So I have done some, but only a few. It's not really my wheelhouse. I leave it to people that can do it really well.
I think when we sort of get to talking about the beers a bit more specifically, it will come through even more. But obviously the tales you talk about, they are ancient tales. And I'm not saying your beers are ancient, but they are very rooted in tradition, aren't they? We're not talking big East Coast hazy IPAs here tonight, are we? We're talking about more where everything began.
Well, yes and no. I mean, I do drink hazy pales myself, but it's not my favourite beer style. And I haven't produced commercially yet a hazy pale. Not saying that it won't happen. But yeah, it is traditional. Most of what I'm producing is going into cask. That's what the demand is locally where I am at the moment. Although I do a bit of keg as well. We've got a best bitter that you're going to be drinking. I've got stouts, just done golden ale that I say I've done. My partner is responsible for the golden ale because that was brewed for International Women's Day. But also, some more modern American, a West Coast IPA, a red IPA, American and New World hops and more hop forward. And I think the best bitter that you'll be drinking, the Dead Moon, is it's English hops. It's traditional English hops, Fuggles, Bramling, Cross, and Whitbread Goldings, but quite heavily hopped compared to some bitters. So yeah, quite traditional, but with a little bit of a cutting edge as well, I'd like to think.
Yeah, I mean, in fairness, we had Axel Jack on last episode, didn't we, Dave? And I think they were doing very similar things to what you're doing. There's no knock on tradition. It's why it's all sort of spawned now, but you can bring it into the 21st century and update things and give it a bit of a twist, as you say.
And I get the impression that's what you were doing. You were starting off maybe a bit more in your comfort zone, and I think maybe you're going to stray and do other stuff as you go along.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. Just starting out as a new brewery, I need to be making the beers that I know that I can sell in my local market, and a lot of the pubs locally are quite traditional and are looking for beers that are safe for the drinkers, shall we say. Yeah. But yeah, there are definitely other beer styles that I'd like to experiment with and to push for as we move forward. Yeah.
So we should tell people that you actually only started commercially last September.
Yeah, the brewery itself was incorporated in October of 2022, and the first commercial release wasn't until just at the end of August last year. So it had taken me a good 10 months from setting the business up to actually having any beer out in the wild. A long journey, but got there eventually. And actually, even then, things have only really picked up since right at the end of November. It's a very long and complicated story that my partner tells me that everyone else is not interested in.
If you're going to talk to two people who are interested, it'll be us. Maybe nobody else is, but we definitely are. Tell us a story.
To go back just a little step, you asked about how I got into it. I had been very close to buying a pub and setting up as a brew pub in the summer of 2019. And I'm very glad that I didn't, because we all know what happened in 2020. So it's been something that I've been thinking about for a little while. And then my children persuaded me in 2021 that I should seriously think about it. And I did say to them that it could be a very good way of blowing their inheritance. But they said, no, Dad, go for it. So yeah, so something that I worked towards gradually for a good while. But I'm naturally quite risk averse. So I initially started off contract brewing with a brewery based in Bolton. The first beer we had a major problem with, and it went down the drain. It tasted and smelt fantastic, but looked awful. I did see if I could get a contract for one of those restaurants where you eat in the dark, but I unfortunately couldn't pull that off. And that was as early as May that was first brewed, but that went just down the drain. And it was just very difficult scheduling production. I then bought my own brew kit and then discovered that the unit that I had a lease on didn't actually have planning permission. So I couldn't actually brew in that unit. And then just about that time, and I was really tearing my hair out and I didn't know how on earth I was going to make this whole thing work. Another brewer in Rochdale asked me if I'd like to basically go and share premises with him. So my brew kit is currently sitting in the middle of the brewery doing nothing, but his brew kit, obviously he's only using it, once a week or once every 2 weeks or whatever when he's actually brewing. So that's plenty of time for me to be able to brew. And obviously I've got my FVs, so we've got plenty of tank space. So I've been cuckoo brewing, all the brewing myself. And now I'm at a stage where I can brew pretty much as I want to. And now I'm in the position of plenty of beer and I'm out there trying to sell it, which is going quite well. Having the first beer going out into the market just before Christmas was not ideal planning because a lot of pubs have already got their Christmas stock lined up. And then I'm trying to sell beer in January when everyone's doing dry January and staying at home. But there are things that have really picked up. February was a good month and we're not even halfway through March yet and I've sold more already than I did in the whole of February. So things are really picking up.
That's good. That's excellent. So presumably around Christmas time, were you selling a lot of small pack on market stalls and that sort of thing for as Christmas presents?
Yeah, so originally it was, like I said, I did have some keg and then some cask as well from the end of November, but also I did have beer in small packs. So I was selling on markets, like you say, for Christmas, and that's something that I'm doing still as well. So I had a really good market in Stockport just last Saturday. Yeah, so selling on markets on small pack and the small pack has been really helpful because it's been an opportunity to go out into pubs, take a few cans in, give people a sample, and rather than just like, I'd like to sell you this beer, but you've just got to take my word for it that it's okay. Actually being able to give somebody a can and they can taste the beer for themselves and decide whether they like it. And so far they are.
It's a big thing, letting them taste your wares before sale. Do you do tasters on your market stall?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. We certainly do. And it's really interesting talking to people about what they like to drink normally and thinking about, which beer they're more likely to go for out of what I've got to offer, giving the opportunity to taste it. And actually there was a young lad, he was, I don't know, probably about 22, 23, something like that, on the market on Saturday. He had some tasters and the American Pale, the Ash and Elm, he drank that and his response to it was, that's a bit like Beavertown, but I think I like it even better, by which I'm sure he meant neck oil. Yes. But yeah, so it was interesting that he made that comparison immediately. And so it's been really good. And you get some people that will just come up and say, no, I'm just going to take a punt on it. But for a lot of people, having a taster really helps them to commit to making the purchase.
Yeah.
And have you done that market more than once? Are you sort of starting to see repeat trade, or even if not that market, have you going to places now and people are coming back going, I really enjoyed this. What else have you got?
There's only one market so far that we've been to twice. It's getting a pitch on some of these markets around here is really challenging. It's, you've got to get up at sort of early on a Monday morning when the pitches get released and get your booking in before they've all gone. But what I have had is, I'll give a business card out with, every time people are buying the beer. And I've had people that have bought beer at the markets and then placed web orders because I've got a web shop, so you can buy my beer online. I've had repeat orders from a couple of pubs as well. My partner and I went out for a walk one Sunday afternoon a couple of weeks ago and popped into the pub to just have a pint afterwards. Got talking to the bar staff, which then resulted in a sale the following week into the pub. And the Ash and Elm, the American Pale Ale, which is in keg, that keg kicked in just under 3 days, and the pub got back to me and immediately ordered 3 more kegs. So, that's really good.
It's that sort of organic thing that really works in this industry when you don't go somewhere to sell something, you go for a pint and a conversation, but you end up selling something and on it goes from there. Building those relationships is so important, I think.
Absolutely. It's one of the joyful things about being in the beer industry is that the work can be good fun.
Yeah. Just backtracking to before. So which brewery are you at in Rochdale?
It's Serious Brewing in Rochdale. I don't have a problem with that. It's an open, it's an open thing that I'm brewing there. I think one thing, that is important to be clear about, and not everybody appreciates this and understands this, is the difference between contract brewing and cuckoo brewing.
Yeah, good point.
And what that actually means. So when I was contract brewing, that was a case of me giving a brewer a recipe and he was following the recipe, and I was there on brew day and was involved. But when I was contract brewing, Neil at the brewery I was working at there very much wanted to be in full control of his brewing kit, and I can't blame him for that, really. But since going to Sirius, I did a couple of brews with Ken at Sirius where he was just introducing me to his kit, and I think that was like twice that basically I was doing everything but he was directing me through it. But from the third brew day onwards, essentially, I've been flying solo and doing all the work myself. And that, I think that is important for people to appreciate. It is my work, and hopefully people appreciate the beer and enjoy the beer, and I can take and I rightfully take credit for it. Equally, that means if anyone doesn't like it, it's my fault.
So the size of the kit you're using, what size is the Sirius kit then?
So it's a 6-barrel brew kit. So that means I can get at a push just over 1,000 litres. That's the absolute limit, which works out to around about 25, 26 casks, or about 2,500 cans.
Which isn't an insignificant number, to be fair.
It takes some shifting.
So what size is your own kit?
So the kit that I bought and then couldn't use, I'd actually bought the kit from Thirst Class when Thirst Class were closing down in Stockport.
Oh, in Stockport, yeah.
So I bought the kit from Thirst Class, which is a 10-barrel kit. And as I say, originally I was hoping to get that installed at a unit that I had got at Salford at the time, but obviously that hasn't worked out. So the Sirius, there's the 6-barrel FVs that Ken has got at Sirius himself, and I've also got a couple of 10-barrel FVs. So I could do a double brew if I wanted to push my brew length a bit longer, because I could do a double brew and then fill the 10-barrel FV. But the 6-barrel kit works for me as well. It is, as you were saying, Dave, it's quite a bit of beer to sell, so it's keeping me busy.
Are you doing this full time now, or have you got a job alongside this?
So by profession, I'm a primary school teacher. I was a primary school teacher for a good 25 years or so before deciding to try being a brewer. I
bet you're a fun primary school teacher. I can just imagine it.
Well, I hope so. But so at the moment, I'm doing a little bit of supply teaching. And obviously, it's been a long journey, even just to get to making the first sales. And obviously, building towards selling enough to be able to make a living out of the brewery. So I'm doing a little bit of supply teaching still, but I'm very much getting to the stage now where I'm having to be very careful about making sure I've got enough time for the brewery, because the supply teaching is nice. It's good to have a little bit of cash coming in, but the brewery is keeping me pretty busy now. So essentially it's probably 85% of my working week is the brewery.
And obviously you can't go down the route of how you got into brewing through your general studies, because the children are not quite old enough for...
No, I think I mean, I don't
Maybe
know.
the parents. You could do a parents' evening.
Yeah, I could do a parents' evening. I think, to be honest, these days you'd probably get into trouble for teaching under 18s to brew even in sixth form. But I think primary school would definitely be pushing the limit. Yeah, it's interesting actually, because going as a supply teacher, the children want to know what you're doing on the days that you're not there. So I just say to them, I've got another job. Don't go into what the other job is.
Not too much detail. Now, we should talk about the beers a bit. If I'm right, you've released 6 beers so far.
That's right, yeah. You've had a look on the website.
I have, yeah. And you were kind enough to send us 4 of them, which is fantastic. I've got the Ash and Elm American Pale. Dave's got the bitter. Have you started it yet, Dave?
Yes, I have. I'm at least a third of the way through it. Now, we talked about this morning, and I said to Dave what I was going to have, and, well, you can't raise an eyebrow on a phone call, but I know he probably was, because Best Bitter would not be the type of beer I normally go for. I don't mind them, they're just not my style, but I like to try these sorts of things when talking to people, just to get a bit more input on them and find out a bit more about them. This is nice. I really get a lot of caramel, which I think is what you're hoping for with the tasting notes. So what was the sort of thinking and the story behind Dead Moon then? I mean, I've read the story behind Dead Moon. I read it while I was having a bit of the beer, which is, I remember the story vaguely as well. Is it one of those which exists in other, it sort of has multiple versions, if that makes sense?
An awful lot of stories exist in different locations. So the story of Dead Moon originates in Lincolnshire, but it's a story that has been published in lots of collections of folk tales, and there probably are similar stories in other locations as well. I'm not 100% sure about that. But in the story, the moon comes down to earth and gets tricked and caught by boggarts and witches and all sorts of nasty creatures in the fens and gets taken prisoner, essentially. And the villagers are very concerned about this because without the light of the moon in the sky, they're concerned about the boggarts and witches coming after them as well. And part of the story takes place with the villagers having discussions in the village inn about what they're going to do about this problem. So I was thinking, well, what kind of beer would they have been drinking in that village inn? Back in the day when the moon came down and was caught by the witches. So yeah, that's why I have brewed a best bitter. Yeah, and best bitter it varies an awful lot from across different parts of the country what people consider to be a best bitter. Up here in the Greater Manchester area, bitter is generally quite pale and hasn't got as much kind of caramel character. So this is I think is more akin to a Suffolk best bitter. So it's quite a deep amber colour, and like you say, it has got that caramel character to it, as well as the sort of fruitiness from the hops.
I do sometimes think of a best bitter, and it gets that you get a bit of a malty backbone with some, as you say, around various bits of the country. There's not really any of that. It's very caramelly, and it's also very light as well, which I'm quite surprised about.
I mean, the malt bill in there is obviously mainly pale malt, which all beers are, a bit of crystal and a little bit of wheat, really just for a bit of head retention. So the caramelly character is coming from the crystal malt. That's giving you that caramel kind of flavour. If there wasn't the crystal in there, then the more kind of bready maltiness would come through more from the pale malt. And yeah, crystal malt in a best bitter is actually a relatively new thing. It's a 20th century thing. If you go back more than 150 years or so, it wasn't used, but it is it's quite commonly used in a lot of parts of the country. And I like that balance between the sort of caramel sweetness and the bitterness from the hops and the fruitiness of the hops as well. So I like to think that it's quite balanced. It is it is quite a light sessionable beer. It's 4.3%, and I think it's a beer that goes down quite easily, and that's one of the things about best bitter. It's not a beer that you're going to sort of sit and ruminate about. It's not that kind of beer, but it's the kind of beer that you can easily have 3 or 4 pints in over the course of an evening while you're sat in the pub having a chat with your mates, and it's just one that you can go back to easily, I think.
I would completely agree.
Well, I'll tell you what, like I said, I'm drinking the American Pale, Ash and Elm, and this tastes like a very modern beer to me.
Yeah, thanks. It's an American pale ale, so I was thinking, obviously the classic is Sierra Nevada, one of the granddaddies of the craft beer movement, I suppose, one of the original beers that started craft beer off. I'm not saying that it tastes like Sierra Nevada or Neck Oil, but it's a nod in the direction of a beer like that. And yeah, I think it is quite modern. I haven't done a cask version of it yet. That's on the brew sheet for within the next couple of weeks. That beer was done in keg originally, and it is a beer that I think suits the keg dispense format really well. And it'll be interesting to see how it comes out as a cask beer. But yeah, that was the first beer that I brought out. It was when I first started thinking about the idea of launching this brewery, I started playing about with recipes a bit more seriously and thinking about what I might do. And this was the first one that I did, the first recipe that I really kind of started to fine tune. Yeah, so it's quite fitting that it ended up being the first beer that I released, I suppose, as well. And the story that goes with it, the Ash and Elm, it's a kind of Viking equivalent of the Adam and Eve story, essentially. And it's Odin creating the first man and the first woman. So the picture on the pump clip and on the can label is a man and a woman in Viking dress. And when the beer came out, people that know me and my partner Ruth were looking at it and saying, "Oh, is that you and Ruth on the can?" And we were like, no, it's just just a man and a woman because it's the story, and people kept saying
he's got a big beard, this guy, though. Are you sure?
Well, he has got a big beard and long hair, hasn't he? So then after a little while, I went to my artist and I said, people keep saying this is me and my partner Ruth, and then he said, well, actually, it kind of is. So I didn't realise it, but yeah, no, apparently that's me and Ruth on the can there.
Excellent. And hop-wise in here, we've got Chinook, Cascade, and Simcoe. Now, I'm not a big fan of Chinook or Cascade, but it's not bothering me at all. It's a little bit bitter at the end, a little bit resinous, but not loads, not really heavy.
No, it's got a bit of bitterness there, but it's not overpoweringly so. The Chinook is primarily the bittering hop, so that's gone in at the start of the boil to give it some bitterness, but and only a little bit later on, so it's not giving as much of the kind of piney resinous thing that you can get with Chinook. Yeah, you'll find the West Coast IPA when you get around to drinking that's much more bitter.
Right.
That as you'd expect with it being a West Coast IPA. Yeah, absolutely.
So, as for the future, how do you want the brewery to pan out? What's the end goal? What's the dream?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously the kind of short to medium term goal is that it starts paying me a wage.
It's amazing.
Which would be lovely.
It's amazing how many people say that. And, I guess that a lot of people out there who drink beer just presume that brewers make beer, sell it, make money, and it's all happy days. But it's a tough industry, isn't it?
Oh, it absolutely is. And there are a lot of breweries that have been finding it really tough. And sadly, a lot of breweries that have closed recently. It is a tough industry. It's a very competitive industry. There are a lot of microbreweries around, and sadly, the vast majority of the drinking population drink the macros. That's why they are the macros, isn't it? So yeah, it's a tough business, and there are all sorts of costs that people just don't really think about. And yeah, but I'm well on the trajectory to be selling enough beer that being a viable business going forward is definitely on the cards. But yeah, beyond that, I would like to see the business grow to the extent that I can take on a production brewer to help with some of the sort of the physical aspect of the job. My partner does a lot of the graphic design and a lot of the social media stuff, and need to be able to pay her for the work that she's doing for free at the moment. So yeah, so growing to a point, to the point of employing a few people, 2 or 3 people, in addition to myself, would be the kind of scale that I want. I want to be able to live comfortably. I want the brewery to be sustainable. I'm obviously not a spring chicken with a long white beard.
I haven't asked you, and I never even thought about it. How old are you anyway?
So I'm 53 years old. So, I've got a good sort of 15 years before I'm going to be a retirement age. I would like to think that before I get to that stage, I would be in a position where the brewery is not dependent necessarily on my day-to-day physical labour, because that's the other thing about brewing. It's a physical job at a small scale. I enjoy that, but I would like to think that by the time I get to retirement age, I might be in a position where either the brewery is something that somebody would want to take on, or something where I can employ somebody that's going to manage it, and then I'm just taking a dividend out of it, or something like that. I've got no ambition to grow enormously and sell for millions or anything like that. I want to have a brewery that keeps me in a comfortable lifestyle and that I can be proud of, and that people can enjoy drinking the beer.
Basically, no big flashy demands, just to sell your beer and make enough to live.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable life goal.
It shouldn't be out of the question that can happen, should it?
No. I think that's definitely possible. And as I say, the trajectory that I'm on, things are definitely moving in the right direction for that.
One thing we often find when we talk to people starting out, it's always brew tap. That's where the money's going to come. I wanted to ask you, because you mentioned it earlier, and also with the whole premise of your beers, I can't imagine an industrial unit would perhaps sit well, but a brew pub with a roaring fire and people sitting around, would that be something that you perhaps want to take the business in?
It would be an interesting way to go. It'd be about finding the right venue. where the unit is, I will be having the occasional open day, sort of once a month or so through the summer, because obviously if you can sell direct to consumer, that's where there's more profit to be made. But it's not an ideal location for a brewery tap room. So yeah, if there was the possibility of getting some kind of tap room, not where the actual brewery is at the moment, would be lovely. It would be ideal. And it's great to be able to, to meet people that are drinking the beer and have those conversations. And I love doing that, going into the pub and if my beer is on, talking to people that are drinking it.
Do you let on that it's your beer, or do you wait to see what they say first?
It depends. A lot of the time I like to just kind of eavesdrop and get an idea of what the reaction is. Yeah. Because I don't want to be getting in people's faces and say, "Oh, I brewed that." It's like, I don't want to be that annoying kind of character. But sometimes you do get chatting, and sometimes the bar staff will say, "Oh, this is the guy that brewed it," or what have you. Friday was the first time that I've kind of really deliberately been front and centre to a degree, in that we had a beer launch for the International Women's Day beer, the Andraste's Hair. And obviously my partner was kind of really front and centre because she'd come up with the concept of the beer. She'd brewed it on brew day. So she was the star of the evening. But obviously it's my brewery's beer as well. So that was the first time I've kind of officially put myself out there as such. And it was great getting some really good feedback from people.
Have you ever had negative feedback? I'm interested in how you would deal with that.
I haven't had any negative feedback face to face. I have had some comments, as every brewer has, on Untapped, that I'm not going to name any particular ones because I don't think that's the right way to do it. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. And if some people don't like my beer, that's fine. If lots of people didn't like it, I'd be worried about it and think I've got to do something about it. But you can't please all the people all the time. Like I said, I've had one or two, a very small number of negative comments on Untapped and on Facebook comments and things like that. And it's a little bit upsetting, I'm human. I can balance it against all the positive feedback that I'm getting. And yeah, it's something you just have to take on the chin. Yeah.
As time goes by, I guess you become more immune to it.
Yeah, I suppose so. I'm very new in the game still. Yeah. I haven't. Yeah, I suppose, when you've been doing it for a few years and you've probably had a few more of those negative comments, then perhaps become a little bit immune to it just through desensitization, perhaps. So it is, it's a little bit upsetting, but I can take it in the context of there's an awful lot of positive feedback and you're never going to please everybody. So,
well, in terms of this beer that I've been drinking, I had a look on Untapped and it's actually got a really good average rating.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I've been really pleased. It's a very subjective thing on Tapped. I don't give too much credence to it, but I do look at the ratings, and actually all the beers have been going down very well. The Dead Moon, the best bitter, is 3.5, which for a best bitter is very respectable.
Yeah. And in the pipeline, have you sort of got new recipes? Are you sort of always thinking about new beers nowadays?
There are a few ideas that are kicking about, but it's matching up. Like what style of beer, what the story is, what the name is, all of that. So I don't want to say anything just at the moment about what's coming up in the immediate future, but things ticking over in my head.
I'm looking forward to the kettle sour. Anyway, it's going to be great.
Well, I won't say never, but you might have a long wait.
I think at some point you will be tempted to give that a whirl again, just out of curiosity to see how it goes.
Yeah, maybe. I would definitely be up for a Flanders Red if I think I can persuade enough people to buy it.
We'll buy it. We both love a Flanders Red, don't we? So if people want to get hold of your beers, how can they do that?
Okay, so the website is breedscross.co.uk. So that's BRIDS. CROSS, and the web shop is right there, so you can go straight to the web shop. As you were saying, Dave, I've got 6 beers out at the moment. Only 4 of them are currently available in cans. That's been an interesting challenge because I don't have my own canning line yet. The wish list of like the next things I'm going to buy is kind of all there as the cash becomes available. So yeah, so the beer has to go away to be canned at the moment. The company that I've used up to now has a minimum quantity of 1,000 litres, and that's a lot of cans. Yeah. But I'm looking at another company where I'm going to be able to have a slightly smaller canning run, and that means I'm going to have more flexibility going forward. So I'm hoping all new releases going forward will go into cans as well as cask. But yeah, the web shop on breedscross.co.uk. And if you want to see what the brewery is up to, we're at Breeds Cross Brew on all the socials.
And you've got a little blog on there, which you update quite a lot, don't you?
Yeah, we try and get a blog, a couple of blogs out every month and keep people updated on what's going on with the brewery. So yeah, people can subscribe to get a monthly update of any blog posts that they might have missed. And we try and be pretty active on the socials to let people know what we're doing as well.
Well, look, thank you so much for joining us. It's been very interesting. I wish one of my kids was in your class at school. I guess story time would be really good fun.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I don't know. I think you might be a little bit off my patch. But, who knows? But Dave B, I should say, as you are down in Suffolk, I am going to be doing a Meet the Brewer at the Theberton Lion on April the 25th. So that's not too many miles up the A12 from where you are. If you'd like to come along, you'd be more than welcome. There'll be 5 of my beers pouring there, and it'd be good to have a chat with you then if you're able to make it.
Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcast.
Now, if you fancy getting hold of some Breeds Cross beers, you can do so, and with a 10% discount, because Sean and Ruth have given us a code to pass on to you to use on their web shop. So head over to breedscross.co.uk, use the code DAFT10, and get yourself 10% off any order up until April the 30th. Favourite beer time now on the podcast. This is Tried and Tested. What have you been trying and testing and enjoying, Dave?
So it actually fits quite well in terms of when we were talking to Sean for Breeds Cross. It was beers that have a lot of history behind them, more traditional styles. And I ended up tasting a Belgian strong dark ale. Belgian aficionados will know of, if I say Vellerin, it's West Vellerin. West Vellerin 12 is the sort of one each year that everyone gets very, very excited about. It used to be very, very expensive, but I think as it's become a bit more popular, it's not as exclusive as it used to be. But this isn't by them, but the beer is called Vellerin, and it's Vellerin Brewing 12, and it is port barrel aged. It was 12%. It was just so smooth, so delightfully smooth. You could taste the port, but it was a lovely port barrel, and it didn't overtake. I'd never heard of this brewery. It is by Deca Brewery, DECA. So they're not anything to do with West Vellerin or anything. It's another Belgian brewery out there. I think they might be in the same sort of area or something.
Okay.
It was exactly what it said it would be. It was strong. It was port. It tasted of port as well, but it was just really smooth, really easy to drink, and it got the full 5 on Untapped, which is very rare for me. So.
I feel as though I need to hit a button that does an applause effect, because we don't get this very often. Full 5, brilliant.
If you did want to get hold of it in the UK, as it's a Belgian beer, you can get it from the beer shop in Berry that I got it from, Beautiful Beers, £4.70.
Wow, £4.70 for a beer rated 5 out of 5.
Exactly, and there are plenty in stock.
Well, mine isn't a 5. It wouldn't have been far off a 5. I think I gave it 4.5 on Untapped, and it was one of the Death by Christmas chocolate cake series from Siren. Now, I read some reviews of these beers. It sort of put me off them a little bit, saying they weren't as good as previous years. So I thought, oh, shall I get them, shall I not? And I did get them, and I never got round to drinking them at Christmas. I think the bad reviews put me off. But I went in for this one, and it was brilliant. It's just everything you wanted it to be, really. Velvety smooth, not overly sweet, not as boozy as it smelled. It smelled really boozy, but wasn't. Smooth, sweet enough, boozy enough, without being over the top. I really need to drink the other 3 in the series, because I bought all 4, and no reason not to now at all. Now, this is where you'd usually hear our dramatic hype or tripe music. But we don't always do hype or tripe. Sometimes we like to make ourselves look really stupid. So we've got 3 beers by Siren, and they're 3 mystery beers. Yonder did a similar thing recently. I had a stab, not on the podcast, but here without you lot listening, what I thought those were. I'm sure they were completely wrong as well. But we've got 3 mystery beers, and the point is here, it's a thing that Siren have been doing. They're inviting everybody to guess the hop, and you can enter what hop you think it is on their website, which we're going to do live as we talk to you. Excited, Dave?
I am slightly nervous, but at the same time, you got to give it a go. I'd like to think we've done enough now that we'd, between us, we might get nearly there or something. Maybe get 2 out of 3 between us or something.
We haven't even opened the cans yet, and I've looked at the cans. They're all similar, look the same, but they're different colours. Now I'm thinking, has the colour got something to do with it here? The colour is influencing me before I've even tasted the beer.
Yeah, it's green, blue, and yellow.
I mean, I don't know what hop
Is blue.
The colour blue represents. I've got no idea. But it's funny how you start thinking all these things, isn't it? Let's go with the green one, because hops are green.
Okay, but funnily enough, that's the one closest to my glass.
So are all these beers the same base with different hops put into the dry hop? Is that what we're saying?
I believe so, yeah. They're all the same strength. They're all labelled as double dry hopped IPAs. You've got to assume it's the same base recipe with a different hop.
Right. Well, I think I already know what that one is, just from the smell. The smell?
Yes, I do know the smell, but here you go. This is the moment where I know this smell. I've smelt this smell so many times, but can I put it to the hop right now? No, because I'm panicking.
The funny thing is that this, if I am right, this is what I thought the green one would represent. Well, for me, it's Citra.
I think moving forward, we should go 3, 2, 1 and say it at the same time, so it doesn't look like because then it now looks like I'm just going to go, oh yeah, I was going to say Citra. I was going to say Citra.
Okay. I'm happy with that. Goodness, this feature's not going to take very long, is it? Goodness me, what experts we are. Nailed it in about 15 seconds.
I would say that's a really nice Citra.
It is lovely, isn't it?
Mm.
Isn't it weird, though? You open the can, and you smell it and think, yeah, I know that smell. It's nice to be able to then taste it and say, yes, that is Citra.
Did you play the same association thing, which I did? Because I thought green, and I thought of the Oakham Citra beer, and then I was thinking green will be Citra.
Well, I did think green would be Citra, but I hadn't thought of Oakham Citra. But yeah, that's great. Yeah, I see where you're going.
I've jumped ahead. I've opened blue, but I won't put it in my glass yet. I'll smell it. But yeah, sorry, carry on.
So have we now got to log on to...
Well, no, because I've got the page up.
Oh, you've got it up? Shall I get it up as well?
Yeah, because it says, have you tasted all 3? You'll want to be confident before submitting.
Right, so what's the website?
We've got to do all 3. So it's sirencraftbrew.com/guess-the-hops.
Big prize. Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, we've got to say, you get prizes for this.
Oh, yes, there are prizes involved, actually, aren't there?
Can you?
Yeah, what's in it for you? You get a discount code for just getting involved. All of our winners go into a prize draw, and the campaign has been extended until Sunday, the 5th of May.
So we're both pretty confident we've nailed the first one, then?
Yeah, I think if we're wrong there, we might have to pack up podcasting, because I'd be amazed if that's not... Well, I say that, and then it won't be, will it?
Well, yeah. Oh, dear. It's going to be very embarrassing. At least I'm kind of glad we don't find out straight away, actually, because... hopefully people will forget about it. What do you think of the beer anyway? It's quite pleasant, isn't it?
I really liked that. It's lovely and soft, very fruity. I do like a double dry hop beer anyway. I'd have no complaints with that. It's not going to be one I'm going to remember for weeks on end, but if I wanted a nice hazy double dry hop pale, bang, I'd have that and be very happy.
When we ordered these from Siren, which I should just point out, we did actually pay for these as paying members of the public. We got some other beers as well from Siren, and I've had a few of them already, and they're always there, aren't they, Siren? I think it's fair to say probably we wouldn't drink too many of their beers usually.
They were sort of one of those breweries that their cans ended up in supermarkets quite early on, and like Soundwave had it from part of that order, because we ordered a couple of boxes of little cans, didn't we? And that's one of them, and that's nice still. The other thing I'd say is whenever I have been out and seen their stuff, the beers that I will have of theirs on tap are the Suspended In series, which is, funnily enough, they're single hop beers. They're always really good.
Yeah. We talked about those small cans. I opened a can of Mesmerist the other day. They're soft pale ale.
Yeah, it was nice, wasn't it? It's very soft. I've had one of those.
Really good. I was really impressed with that. I definitely get hold of that again.
They are exactly what they've designed them, aren't they? They're little 330 cans, perfect little fridge fillers. And very, very good at, when you want to grab something that tastes nice, perhaps isn't doing loads and loads. Yeah. No, but it doesn't always need to, does it?
No, not at all. Yeah, I think they very much nail what they do. And this sort of stuff's great. It's got us involved, hasn't it?
Exactly. It gets you talking. It's a good game.
Only if you win, though, Dave.
Well, only if you win. Speaking of which, I've got the second one ready. I've gone blue.
Blue. Okay, well, blue it is.
I haven't smelt it yet. I'll wait until you're ready. I will say, once you've poured it, I reckon you'll associate it. Or you'll associate a hop. I am without.
Got an idea, just from smelling it. I would encourage listeners to get involved with this, actually, because I think people generally get a little bit scared of putting their head on the line when it comes to identifying hops. Look, we're probably going to get some of these wrong. It doesn't matter, does it? I think just trying to extend your knowledge of what you're drinking can only be a good thing. Recognise that smell?
See, the smell for me is really subdued by comparison to this, what we think is Citra.
Well, it is, isn't it?
And as is the taste.
As the taste, even more.
It's not very punchy.
It's very dialed down, isn't it?
Which makes it tricky.
So we can rule out some of those really pungent hops, like Nelson or Sabro, Galaxy. I think we can rule all those out.
I have a theory. I have a theory of what this might end up being for the whole trilogy. So okay, I'm ready. I'm going to.
I think I'm with you.
Okay.
I think I now know what the next one's going to be, having just worked out what this one is.
Okay.
Right. So hold on. So the first one, the green can, we're saying
Citra.
Right. And let's do a 3, 2, 1 and say what we think this one is. So 3, 2, 1, Mosaic. Yes. Which would lead us to believe that the next one is Simcoe, because they are your three big hops: Mosaic, Citra, and Simcoe.
I'm hoping they've gone wild card with the yellow, but yes, that's now what I'm thinking as well. Even Katie, who's in the vicinity, was called out Mosaic for that one, and she couldn't even spell it or anything, so she's just listening to the conversation.
In a way, I'd quite like it to be Simcoe because it means we're probably going to get them right. But in another way, I'd like it to be something really obscure so that we've really got to think about it. But either way, it's a valuable experiment, isn't it?
It is. I suppose perhaps we're thinking that with what we've talked about with what Siren do, perhaps it was naive to think they're going to do like one Sabro, one Galaxy, one Raku or something, you know?
Yeah, maybe.
Because if you want to get people in talking and learning about hops, probably the way to start is with Citra, Simcoe and Mosaic.
Yeah.
But we could be wrong. We should open the final one. While we open the final one, do you want to quickly tell us about what you got up to at Beer X?
For those who don't know, it's SIBA's trade show where basically anybody involved in beer ends up being there, and there's talks from different people in the industry. There are trade stands to look at, people showcasing their glassware. There's hop providers there. You can smell their hops. The beer awards, industry beer awards. It's all basically, this is the place you've got to be. It's 2 days in the middle of March every year in Liverpool. So we went up for the one day. We were going to go on the train, which was very restrictive because I was told I had to leave Liverpool by 7 p.m. I didn't like the sound of that very much. So know what happens? You start seeing people that you know having a beer or two. You don't want to go home at 7 o'clock, do you? Anyway, look, we didn't go on the train in the end. Lisa drove, so we didn't have any of those worries whatsoever. Her big concern was getting home before about 2 in the morning, which
I was going to say, bundling you into a car.
Which we got home about 1:30 in the end. But it was great fun. We bumped into loads of people who've been on the podcast. The guys from Tapdoor were there, which was great. Met up with them. They also hosted an after party at Liverpool Brewing Company, which is really good. When Eric from Guypool was in there, funny enough, he'd popped in for one.
Laden down with all his awards.
Yeah. He'd got a big bag. I suppose it was just full of awards.
Well deserved, I would say.
We went to Dead Crafty as well, which is sort of one of the craft beer institutions in Liverpool. And that was nice. Gave us a nice warm welcome. Gave Lisa a nice cup of tea as well because she was restricting herself to the alcohol. Yeah, they've got some US beers on tap in there.
Just as an aside, have you noticed all of a sudden there's been a big influx again? Everyone's suddenly managed to get a load of American stuff.
I find myself now thinking, am I that fussed by it? Do I want any? Do I want to pay £12 a can, £14 a can, whatever it is? Is it that much better?
It's interesting because I've noticed that the pricing is very competitive now for some.
Okay.
Some of the things that have come over are still horrendously expensive. I've noticed that Hopping Frog, for example, that's around, but that is very pricey for small cans.
I've had some Hopping Frog and it's all right.
Yeah.
It's not really worth a premium, is it? Well, I didn't think so anyway.
The gap has shrunk massively to the point where you don't need it. But every so often, I think there are still a couple of those US breweries that it is worth trying just to see what they're doing now, because have they moved on again?
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, when we were in Dead Crafty, we had another half beer on tap, and that was superb.
Was it doing anything different to what is here now, or was it just really, really well done? Because that's kind of what I think of those guys, like that kind of beer. It's just going to be so well done.
Yeah, hard to pick fault with it. Yeah.
Speaking of beers, have you got your yellow beer ready?
I have. I shall smell it first. We're going to look like such muppets if we get all three of these wrong.
I must say, I'm not. It might be once I taste it, but I'm not quite willing to saddle up to.
Ooh, maybe not.
No,
maybe
it's a little bit.
They've been a bit sneaky.
It's a little bit sweatier than Simcoe, I think.
Oh, that's a wild card, isn't it? Very fruity.
It is, but then at the end, it's quite bitter.
Oh, I don't get any bitterness. Well, look, I'm glad we've ended with this one because I think we'd have been completely thrown if we'd have started with this one.
I don't think it's Simcoe.
I know that smell. You see, you can host a beer podcast for the best part of 4 years and still not have a blooming clue what you're drinking. Thing is that we've got Mosaic and Citra for the other two. If I had to put those in order, I'd say Citra, Mosaic, Simcoe. That's the order they cut. That's the order the three big hops come in for me. But they didn't tell you what order to drink them in.
No, very true.
So we just happen to have those in that order. But I think this is a wild card, isn't it? This smells like it could be a New Zealand hop.
I thought that.
In fact, I think it is definitely a New Zealand hop.
See, I've narrowed it down to two in my head.
I've smelt this and I've tasted this. If I was on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire now, I'd say I want to lock in my answer. They do lock in your answer? That's a millionaire thing, isn't it? Or is
if I was on this, I'd probably obviously phone a friend would be a bit irrelevant. I'd want that 50-50 thing to remove two, but I bet it'd leave a two because it always leaves a two, but you don't want it.
It's going to leave you Simcoe and something else, isn't it?
Well, that'd be fine because the two I'm debating, they're not Simcoe.
Yeah, I think we can remove Simcoe, having thought it would be, then we can remove it from the equation. For me, this is a New Zealand hop.
Well, then we're going to say different hops, I think.
And I just associate those New Zealand hops with being really fresh, vibrant, fruity, and this has got all of that. I need to pour out a little bit more. I need a bit more thinking time. Yeah, so going back to Beer X, it was good we got caught up with Rob from Briarbank, who's obviously been on the podcast.
And was another award winner.
Yeah, he picked up a silver award for his hop to it.
Yes. Yeah, we were talking about this off air, and I was saying that Briarbank, when we had Rob on, he was very keen to sort of move beyond a lot of the traditional stuff that was on there. And now if you go into Briarbank in Ipswich, it has moved on a pace. All of Briarbank's beers are in cans now, and some of his stuff, the majority of his stuff, in fact, is so, so good. Suffolk Haze is a New England pale that I would say stands up with anyone else's in the country. Wow. And I do mean anyone else's. And the taps are now really exciting. There's all his stuff, and when the guests are on, there's good stuff. There was plenty of good stuff on last time I was in there. And yeah, Hop to It is one of his earliest sort of more hoppy beers, and it's great to see a beer like that getting recognition.
I think he's attracted a new, younger audience off the back of that change.
The recent times I've gone in there have been match days for Ipswich, and they're busy now anyway because Ipswich are actually quite good at football again, and the town itself is coming alive with that as a separate note. But when you go in there on a match day, even 2-3 hours ahead, the place is getting busy, and it's not a big space upstairs. What he's got, they've got a sort of a wooden covered bit downstairs, marquee type thing, which they use for their beer festivals, which are also really worth going to because he gets a really good spread of stuff for those.
Because when I've been to Ipswich out with you, and it was your stag do, and we went to Briarbank, but we couldn't go inside. So it was like COVID restrictions.
It would have been, wouldn't it? So yeah, so we were outside then, but obviously we're now going back. It'll be 3 years in the summer, and you are well overdue a trip down here because... Yeah,
I'd love to go and sample some of his beers at source.
That, and also the town as a whole, because it's sort of one of the themes of the podcast has been me banging on about how this area is so, far behind. It is catching up, which is really getting there, but there's also other little places popping up here and there. But you can do a good trip around Ipswich now with 3, 4, if not 5 good venues.
Well, let's get that penciled in for sooner rather than later. Yeah, I think I know where I'm going with this hop. I think I know what I'm going to say. I said I thought it was a New Zealand hop. I still think it is. I've got the one I want it to be. We're not going to say the same thing here, so we don't need to do the 3, 2, 1. What are you saying? What are you saying it is?
Azaka.
I'm saying Nectaron.
Oh, okay. I haven't had loads of it. We've talked about this before, but when I have had it, it's fruitier than this would be.
All I get from this is fruit.
The fruitiest one was green by a long way for me. Long way.
Oh, this is the fruitiest for me by a country mile. Well, I'm just looking here. So Nectaron was supposed to give you tropical pineapple, passion fruit, stone fruit characters. I get all of that from that.
I do get those. I won't lie, but mind you,
there's plenty of other hops that do it as well. So
yeah, I think a Nectaron was being a bit sweeter than that was for me. I
get quite a bit of sweetness out of it. Okay. So interesting how you perceive things differently, isn't it?
Well,
I hope to God I beat you.
Oh, okay. So we've just got to make sure. So beer A is green. So I'm just now inputting my answers. So beer A, I'm saying Citra.
Right. So I'm going to do it as well.
Beer B, I'm saying is Mosaic.
Have you tasted all 3 beers?
Yeah, make sure you tick yes.
Yes. Beer A was the green one. So we're saying that is Citra. Of course, actually, having said that they didn't tell you what order to have them in, they are labelled A, B, and C. We think A is Citra.
Yes.
We think B is Mosaic.
Yes.
It would make sense if C was Simcoe.
It would, wouldn't it? But I think
they're playing with
ourselves. I think we've got to trust ourselves because neither of us thought that was Simcoe. Not even close to Simcoe either.
It's just too fruity.
It's too fruity,
it's too fruity, isn't it? How come they give you 255 characters to write down which hop you think it is, Dave?
Well, I assume without getting into the technicalities, it's probably that's what the word box limit size is on what they've used. Like, it seems a bit odd.
We'll be in touch at the end of March to let you know how you did. I think that's changed now because they've extended the window, haven't they, until May?
Yeah, so I'm not necessarily expecting that we'll get to find out at the end of March, as exciting as it would be too. But yeah, we might be waiting. The results might not be in until
a couple of more episodes, I guess.
Yeah, so there's a reason to keep downloading.
But what that means is that listeners have got a good chance now to get hold of these beers.
Yes.
Please do. If you've tried these beers or you're going to try them, let us know what you think.
Doing that got us a 10% code. And the other thing that is going on with Siren at the moment is they're actually 11 years old and they are celebrating it as they should be with beers. They've done a celebration box, which has it all in. So they've done an anniversary Hellers, an anniversary Dipper, a anniversary cacao and coconut stout, anniversary barley wine, which is the maiden beer, that's been a staple. There is glassware and there is merch as well. Actually, it's probably worth just talking about beers themselves, Dave. I thought beer A is a really, really good beer.
Yeah, I thought my favourites there were A and C. I would say C was my favourite, followed by A. B was a bit subdued and I've already forgotten B.
I think B, I'm not going to be too worried about finishing. A, I'm just now going back to having had a bit more of C because obviously for, research purposes, I needed to have more of it.
Obviously.
Yeah, A is my favourite, then C, and then B.
So I think we've both agreed on the middle one being our least favourite.
But the other two would be very complimentary about as we are being now.
I'll tell you what was interesting. Did you notice that B was a lot clearer than A and C?
Yes, which is exactly why I started to think straight away this is going to be Mosaic.
Yeah.
I thought once you pour that out, you're going to know what it is.
The more I drink of this, I'm convinced that's Nectaron.
Well, we're probably not going to find out for at least a month. But I hope you're right.
No, you don't. You hope you're right.
Oh, I don't mind. As I say, if between us we get it all, I'll be very happy.
No, that would be good, wouldn't it? Right, well, I think that is just about it for this episode of Daftaboutcraft. Really enjoyed that. Great fun. You can catch our next episode, number 59, the week beginning April the 15th. We'll be back with more of this sort of stuff. We'll catch you then.
Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcast.